Hello, today we're going to talk about preparing for your interviews. Have you ever been in an interview situation and realized maybe you didn't quite prepare enough? If so, you're not alone. We hear this a lot from our candidates that they get into these situations and they realize that actually, if they had known a little bit more about the company, they could have perhaps answered some questions better or asked better questions, which is key. So, I am Carina Clingman. I'm the founder and CEO of Recruitomics Consulting and co founder of the Collaboratory Career Hub. And we're going to dive right into how to prepare for your interviews. So, this is part of our Ask a Recruiter series. I am functioning as the recruiter today. And in this series, we do broadcast live to our social networks. So, if you're coming to us from either our Facebook group, our Facebook page, YouTube, or Instagram, not Instagram, excuse me, LinkedIn, we welcome you. If you are not a member of our Slack community, we do invite you to join that. That is where you get to interact directly with our recruiting team from Recruitomics Consulting and other industry experts. And we also have additional live events in that community only during the week. It's a totally free community, and you can find the link to that in the description for this video. All right, with that, I'm going to pop some slides in here. So, in pre-interview preparation, it is so important that you really take the time to research the company, the folks that work there, and to get your ducks in a row before you go on site or onto a virtual interview. There are a number of things that you can do to accomplish this. Obviously, going to the company's website. That said, some companies are in stealth mode and they don't really have a website. So, in that case, you would want to be sure to have asked your recruiter during the initial phone screen what they can tell you about the company. Sometimes it's not so clear. You can research on LinkedIn. Sometimes they have company pages on LinkedIn. Often they do. You can follow their social media and go back through the recent social media posts and see what they've been posting about. Sometimes that's a great place to get some icebreakers for your interviews. A lot of times you'll find some press releases either on their website or through some Google searches. It's really nice to know what their latest news is, what their partnerships are. Sometimes you can find some funding information, some exciting announcements there. And Glassdoor is a great place to go to look for employee experiences. This is a nice place to understand both the good things and the potential pitfalls that you might be experiencing if you were to go to work there. And it can help you to craft some really good questions for your interviewers. And it is also nice to start to link in with some of the current employees and maybe the former employees. LinkedIn is a fantastic networking tool. If you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, but it's definitely a place you should be using to grow your network. And once you are sort of in the running for a job, when you do send out those LinkedIn requests to the current employees or former employees, just mention that you're interviewing for a job. Sometimes you'll get some great insider information. And if you can investigate some of the current funding cycles and some of the current funding news around the company. There are some places you can find that around the internet, but usually the best place to look might be someplace like Crunchbase or the press releases, again, on their website. The next thing you're going to want to do is really dig into the job description. And so here I am going to plug my good friend ChatGPT. I love to take the job description, plug it in, and ask ChatGPT to analyze it for some of the best themes that they're able to pull out, some of the skills, some things that you could prepare for. And ChatGPT can help you to think about some of the common interview questions that folks might be asking based on those skills and the expertise in the job description. So do that. It's kind of fun. You can actually even ask ChatGPT to be your interview buddy and to help you ask. It will interview you based on the questions that could be coming up from that job description and analyze your answers that you type in. So that's kind of fun. But understanding really what is the job you're applying for. Let's start with the title and the summary here. So understanding the title. Sometimes titles are a little bit deceptive. So you might want to look on LinkedIn for other similar titles and make sure that you're able to ask clarifying questions during your interview so you really truly understand what you're getting into. If you do that, then and you find that other titles or there are similar jobs with similar titles but different descriptions, that's a really great place to clarify, because you really don't want to end up in a job that you're not really totally sure what you're going to be doing. Make sure that you're reviewing the hard requirements, like your degree requirements, any certificates that are required, the location, and any specific skills that you may need to speak to. Whether you do or do not have all of the requirements, you just need to be prepared to speak to them. This is a totally different topic that we can go into at length in another Ask a Recruiter event. But being able to speak to missing skills is just as important as being able to speak to skills you do have. Then you're going to want to evaluate the job functions and responsibilities. And this is more in the vein of, you're going to want to ask your interviewers about these in great detail. So they may ask you a lot about the skills and expertise that you're bringing to the table, but you want to be able to turn around and ask them what the actual day-to-day is going to be like, and really clarify that for yourself. And next, you're going to want to be able to discuss your qualifications and your transferable skills. So this is a bigger discussion about what you do bring to the table, what you have done in past companies or past jobs that may be transferable. And then I also like to think about what you might be able to learn in this job. Every job should be a learning opportunity for you. And so this is a place to clarify what those learning opportunities might be. All right, it is really important that you enjoy where you work. So this is where you want to dig into the company's mission and values and ensure that there is good alignment there. You can find some of this information online, often in their social posts. Again, scrolling back through what they've been posting about, that's a nice place to start. But really understanding the goals of the company, the values that the company really holds high, and make sure that you are aligned with those personally. Also, check out their support for the local community and any initiatives that they support. Sometimes that's really telling as to what their internal values are. If you are unclear about any of this, this is a great thing to clarify during the interview process. And if you are well aligned with their values and their goals, this is a nice thing to make sure you highlight in your interview process as well. All right, so next you're going to do a self-assessment. You can do some self-assessment online, especially if it's a technical role, but start to think about really how well do you align with this role, rank your strengths, match them with your interest in their role. Think about your accomplishments, how do those align? This is where you start to craft how you're going to answer the questions. This is worth sitting down and journaling on, and then getting some feedback from some trusted folks in your network, perhaps doing a little workshopping on interviewing, making sure that you're saying things out loud so you're ready for them. This self-assessment piece is so important in the process. And it sort of leads into practicing those questions. So I really recommend getting an interview buddy. We actually do offer this in our community as well, is how to bounce things around in real life out loud with other people who are going through this process, because it's going to make you a lot more confident going into an interview. If you've spoken out your answers, you've gotten feedback on your answers, you have had a chance to review your resume with the team. This is all going to set you up for a really successful interview process, as opposed to, possibly going in and feeling unprepared. So with that, this was a really short little intro to our interview preparation and what we recommend our candidates do for interview preparation. I do have a couple of questions that were pre-submitted, and then I'll also check our socials to see if I have any questions there. All right, so one question is about linking in with your interviewers. So this is a bit touchy. You don't want to come across, right, as possibly, being annoying if you're in LinkedIn trying to link in with your whole interview panel before you've interviewed. I would recommend linking in with people in the company that are more in the same type of role that you're going to be in. So for instance, if you're applying for a research associate position, look for other research associates or former research associates to link in with. Let them know that you're interviewing for a position. You don't need to say exactly which position, but just see what they come back with. They might give you some really great insight into that. But if you do want to link in with your interviewers, I would wait until after the interview for that. And the reason is that's a nice place to say thank you for interviewing, but it also doesn't come across as that, maybe you were a little bit spammy, a little over enthusiastic before the interview process. This is just a perception. There's a lot of personal preference here, but that is my recommendation. All right, another question here is, all right, how much time should we spend talking about our skills and expertise as opposed to asking questions? That is typically really determined by the flow of the conversation in the interview. So you want to be really prepared to speak to all of the different skills and expertise that is required for that position. Again, whether you have it or not, there are some great ways to handle how you could bring in transferable skills if you do not have a specific skill. But usually at maybe let's say you have a half an hour interview, usually around the 20-minute mark, things start to wind down into, hey, what are your questions? Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have asked questions before getting to that point. And honestly, the more conversational an interview, the better. I always think when I come out of an interview, if it was a really good back and forth conversation, that makes me feel really confident that that person is engaged, they've done their research, they're ready to kind of jump in and be a productive member of the team right away. So if you can sneak a few questions in during the first part of the interview, that's great. Definitely in the last 10 minutes or so, that usually tends to be when the tables turn and you get to really heavily ask your questions. So you want to make sure you've prepared some really great questions. We actually have a little cheat sheet for that. If that's of interest, you can join our Slack community and ask for that. But we really recommend that in that last 10 minutes, you really hit the high notes of, what is the day-to-day like? Really make sure that you're going to mesh well with their values. And that you understand fully the role. You've gotten all of your questions answered, because when you leave that interview, you're both going to have to make decisions about whether it's the right role for you. So I guess to answer that question more concisely, there's no hard and fast rule, but you will want to make sure it's sort of conversational if possible. All right, and let's see another question here, and then I'm going to pop over to some socials and see what we've got. All right. How do you handle it if you don't have a skill or you're missing a skill? That's a great question. And we actually have an entire other Ask a Recruiter event on this, because there's so many different, in different situations. There's no one answer to that. It depends on the skill. It depends on how important that skill is to the job. If you're missing a critical skill or a degree, it's so important to spend time polishing how you would bring in transferable skills and make sure that you really are drilling down on how that expertise does transfer from a past job or experience into this job. I think it's also a nice place to highlight how enthusiastic you are about growing. So for me as an employer, and something we work with our clients to really think about, if we were to hire a person who on day one had every single skill and qualification that we wanted, and they were an expert in all of those things, they would be bored by our job in a matter of weeks. And that's not good for anybody. That's not good for the candidate. That's not good for the company. Really, jobs should be a place where everybody has room to grow. So you should come into a job able to do a baseline amount of things or number of things, but also with some aspirations and some room for growth and improvement. And so one tactic that we often have people practice is the ability to name a deficiency. So I don't have X experience. However, I did Y at a previous company, which is very transferable. And I'm really excited to do A, B, C, D to get myself to the level of proficiency in that skill. So it's sort of a framework for how do you engender a little bit of faith that you can come in, you can be a productive member in the role quickly, but then you can also quickly, and you've mapped out how you're going to get there to become the next level employee to bring in the experience they're going to need. So it's a little bit tricky, and we do practice that in the community. All right, let me just pop around to some other platforms and make sure I do It's hard to kind of keep track of everything. If I miss a question, I will try and circle back and answer them in the chats on the various platforms. We do try and make this accessible for everybody. Let's see. All right, so I've got a question here that is about, let me just move the mission and values. So the question is, what if I don't know, what if the company doesn't have a value that I really want? So often, I'll just say this, often our small clients that we work with have not really done a great job yet of branding themselves. So they may share the value that you have, but not be really public with it or not have yet even had the opportunity to be public about it. So let's say, for instance, that education is really critically valuable. It's a critical value that you have. So it is for me, making sure that we are spreading the scientific knowledge to the future generations is really important. So if I don't see that as part of a company's mission statement or values, one thing that I could do is try to, in my interview, state that that's really important to me. And would it be an opportunity to use my interest and to leverage the company's resources in some way to work toward that? So, for example, if you wanted to say, I've partnered with uh, Women in Bio previously to make sure that we had internship opportunities open to candidates in, this underrepresented community. If that would be, if you'd be open to it, I would love to extend that partnership into this company and make sure that we can either have an internship internally or we can spread the word about internships with other companies. So there are ways to get a little creative about how you would want to message what is important to you, which values you want to bring into the company. And you might be surprised by the answer. Even if they haven't yet done the thing that you really want to do, they may be really open to doing something like that, an internship program or supporting an organization that you really value, or a cause that is near and dear to your heart. So don't be shy in your interview to tell them what interests you and see if there's an opportunity to align on that value, even if you don't see it yet publicly expressed. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to end there. We have a couple of other questions coming in, but I do want to give some folks in the community a chance to have a conversation around this. If you are not yet in our Slack community, please join us. It is totally free. It's a great place to connect with other folks that are on the job market or in a professional, seeking professional development. We would love to have you in there. And we do have some Friday events. We do have some career paths events. We have some other things going on in there that are really valuable. So come join us in the community. The link is in the description. And we will see you back here next week for another Ask a Recruiter event. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest